Welcome back to Deep Thoughts, ladies and gentlemen. So I light up this Padron my father sent me. It was actually a part of a Christmas thing, but it took forever to get the stick because of all the backups. Today I thought we'd take a little break to talk about something that annoys the living shit out of me. And it's called, I'm calling this corporate humanity. I keep telling you guys you got to see 1975 James Caan Rollerball. The reason being is it's the nearest future you're going to have. 97% reduction of population. The world will be divided into classes. You're going to have the executives at the top, the athletes in the middle, and the people down below. Amenities also increase the higher you go in that little food chain. But when you watch this movie, you realize that all countries are gone. They talk about it, and the corporate war has happened. There's no real definition of what that means. You could think of it as financial wars. You could think of it as them hiring mercenaries and fighting each other physically in the streets. It's left to your imagination, which is, I think, the best thing to do. But when you watch the film, in the background, if you're an adult, you start to think, geez, how could it get that way? How could the world have gotten to a place where corporations are countries? And I'm going to tell you that it's already right in front of your very face, and the inceptional phase, which is beyond just the functional phase of controlling your life with the technology that you rely on to get your life done, right? You got to use a computer half the time to get anything done, to pay a bill. A lot of kids think that you have to have a cell phone to buy something at the store. I mean, they're so excited to use their phone on these things. Oh, brother. But the big one is them pretending to have humanity, a moral fiber. There are, and the thing is, I need you to understand that any corporation pretending to have an element of humanity is playing a game on you. Now, mom and pop shop, owned by your neighbor, owned by someone who's an upstanding person, even lets you have like a tab at the bar, tab at the grocery store, that's humanity. They know you either are good for the money or you're good for it, but you don't have it right now. That's probably the only thing that really exists. That kind of stuff existed when I was a kid. But Apple Corporation saying that they care about one version of the population, but not so much another version of the population. Hilarious, right? These algorithms are starting to unravel, and they are going to do their best to probably back off of it for a little while and then reestablish themselves at a future time. And you have to understand that these can happen when, let's just say, how do I put this? They can happen organically as a shift to try and create more customer base, meaning trying to add that demographic to their company. And then when that demographic is willing to support all of their errors and their mistakes and their surveillance and all the horrible shit they're doing, then they rely on that as their primary customer base because the other customer base is walking. They're going, look, man, you're trying to spy on me. You know, you're erasing my text messages. You're banning apps that tell the truth or have the mechanism to tell the truth in your app stores. So they're leaving. So then they double down on this really niche market. And then we start figuring it out. We start seeing, oh yeah, you pretend to care about that group of people, but you really don't. And so they pull back, they regroup, and then here's the kicker. They will either pay for and instigate a situation in reality so they can jump off on their brand new platform. They get somebody killed. They fund a war. They do something to create this chaos in the world so they can come in with their Galilean dialectic, right, and solve the problem. And they get this customer base strengthened. And then when they don't do so well and they don't update the products, when their products are obsolete, that group stays for no reason at all. There's the other new business model they've also got. They have this situation where they've converted corporations into incubation bays for top executives, mostly the CEOs. So the corporation creates a fake bunch of caring. Then the CEO is the kingpin. I care more than anyone in my entire company cares. In fact, I care so much, I got to write memos down to my people to make sure they still care. Not quite as much as me, because no one could possibly care as much as me, but, make sure they're kind of in my same church. Then they retire out of that corporation, jump off, and become experts at things that they have no degrees in. Virology and biology and being a doctor in general, being a scientist in general. But because their entire life is based on a fake platform of people who worship them, people listen harder than they should. There's no humility in them. Their ego is all they've got left to hold themselves up in society. And so that's all they do, is spend time with their ego, with the public. I know that you know the names of these people. I don't even have to mention which companies I'm talking about and which CEOs I'm talking about. And you already know who I'm talking about. And that shows you how utterly fucking pathetic this system is. Now, where did they learn it? Where did they learn it? Well, there were companies out there with amazing CEOs that revolutionized the way that cars were made in assembly lines. They revolutionized technology, taking it out of the hands of the corporate supercomputers and mainframes and put them into your household so you could do stuff without anyone telling you that you can't. By the mid-90s, there were books written about how to make a CEO in your corporation and popular, and that was the mechanism to make your corporation itself popular, having taken lessons from these organic ones that happen serendipitously, right? Now, I think it's pretty clear if you do your homework, and if you know some of these people, or you know the people that know these people, some of these ultra-famous CEOs. There was a CEO who will remain nameless, but you're going to know who I'm talking about. And that's how funny this is. He was notorious in the late 70s, early 80s of being very rude to a particular slice of society that had a different orientation than he did. He was on record for saying, I wouldn't hire anybody like that. I don't like anybody like that. And then he grew up. And by the late 90s, in order to clear his conscience, he created a line of products that you could only buy if you were fundraising for a disease that was attached to that orientation. In fact, the color of the products was red, and it's still going to this day. And so that's where this organic thing for that particular company jumped off. He wanted to overcompensate to fix his issue. Instead of just fixing himself, which is where the problem existed. He felt like he needed to use his corporation to apologize for him, in addition to whatever he might have done personally. Okay, that's one scenario. Now, there's another family out there who's very, very connected to eugenics. They helped found some of the eugenics societies at the beginning of the 20th century. One of those organizations turned into Planned Parenthood. Now, it metabolizes up. There is this kid. It's the grandson of the initial guy, I should say. And he's a bit of a techie. He likes computer equipment, but he's a weird fucking kid, man. He's got all kinds of issues. All kinds of issues that were hidden from the public, as a matter of fact. Some of those issues came out when he got in a lawsuit one time, sat at the end of the table, sucking on his tie, and he kept rocking like a little baby. But he's almost 30, if not 30 plus years old. And so what he does is he knows that his agenda is his grandfather's agenda, because they are very self-loathing human beings. I mean, I don't blame him. I wouldn't want to walk by a mirror looking like this guy. But he goes out and turns into a psychopath and a sociopath, right? Because he's inside all the time. No matter where he goes, he gets pied in the face. Everyone just thinks he's an absolute constant train accident, right? Tries to go on stage and be charismatic, presenting something. And although some new CEOs could probably make him look good these days, he gets back into this game where he is allowed to become the richest man in the United States on paper. We constantly mention this guy's name for almost 2 decades. If you want to talk about the analogy of the richest person in the United States, you'd say this guy's name. This guy's name is absolutely synonymous with being the richest guy in the world. He's no longer that, but he's not hurting, right? You see, the thing is when you get that money from those groups, especially through a false paradigm that you actually have a capability that you don't have, and especially when your company is actually not answering to you or the people, it's answering to intelligence agencies who are creating a spy network of operating systems and eventually network systems when the internet came out. There was a reason why a particular company that had one of the most popular operating systems in the world was late to the internet, because they were getting orders not to take it online just yet. Technology was being mastered to track it all. Once that was in place, he was allowed to go full steam. All right. This guy is now a Mengele. He is a Kevorkian. He is now responsible for hundreds of thousands of people that are already dead or maimed. And he is going to be in this truckload of people that are sent off to this little prison in Cuba, because he's now responsible for evangelizing something that is going to take a lot of lives. But if he wasn't pumped up in the corporate world as the kingpin of this company that was only enabled by agencies that wanted one contender in the game of stealing all of your data, now there's a fake duopoly. Well, there's a duopoly. It's a fake choice, and both of them are balls deep in that stuff, right? And there's other contenders now that are doing it. But if he wasn't propped up through corporate humanity, you wouldn't be listening to this guy. How many other CEOs are saying things? We don't listen to the people who invent the technology that's in this latest regiment that's supposed to be inside your body. We don't listen to the people who invented the test that's supposed to catch it, which everything they've said now has become public, and now everyone's acknowledging it. Again, conspiracy one day, 6 months later, it's truth, right? That's the algorithm of life at the latest pace. We've got guys that my gosh, there's a electric car company out there, there's a space agency out there, there's a battery company out there, and it's all run by this mysterious guy whose very Wikipedia bio doesn't make any mathematical sense. Sells a company in the 300 millions, and suddenly he's a billionaire. Well, geez, would you go to Vegas and play the craps? Did you have some insider trading? How do you get from having a percentage of a company's sale with tons of partners and employees with shares? How do you come away with over three times the amount of money selling a company for $320 million or something like that? Because they're fake strawmen. They're built up. Their past is shrouded. Why that guy? Why did they pick that guy over someone else's genetics? Well, they might have looked at a social media company out there. It's pretty popular. Likes to harvest what your face looks like. And they realized that guy absolutely did not, under any circumstance, attract the public. Nobody wants to spend any time with that guy. As a matter of fact, if there was a ticket to see him and a ticket you could buy not to see him, the latter ticket would sell more. So they needed someone that was physically attractive, that was sort of more benign to the sort of touchier issues that are dealt with in social media especially. And so they build the guy up. Lives completely off subsidies from the government, never generates $1 of profit, and then goes on a podcast in Florida and smokes a joint, just like Bill Clinton playing a saxophone in the 90s. And all of a sudden, he's the coolest dude on planet Earth for a lot of people. Wow, man, you see him smoke a joint? Oh my God, man, he's my kind of guy. Here's my wife, here's my kids. But you might be saying, but wait a minute. One of those guys donated money to groups that, man, are not against us. Therefore, he has my vote. Wag the fucking dog, right? Wag the dog. They gave you what you needed to see to think the guy was on your side. There's a slight chance in hell he is. Slight chance in hell. But here's the problem. once you're allowed to be one of these faux leaders, right? You got to do what they say in the end. You do. And they will tell you, okay, here's what you're going to do. You're going to pretend to be an indie guy on the side, which means we're going to allow these tweets. We're going to write them for you. You're going to put them out, and then watch what happens. The sparks will fly. But it's all proved, man. You can even insult this senator. You can do this, do that. It's all to get the people behind you because we're harvesting names. We're tagging, tracking, and IDing people. So you're going to be the Pied Piper to catch them all. So this is why you're going to pretend to be on their side. In the end, guess what? You're going to live past this project to get rid of everybody on planet Earth. Maybe it's not. They always tell you that, and then you're the first guy to get snipped after everyone else is dead. Again, if you're willing to backstab your own people for any amount of money, and you work for those people, you're second tier assassinated. Because you're a piece of shit. They don't want you in their world. My God, you're a thief in the fucking night. So anybody who thinks, I'm getting mine, you're going to get yours, right? Trust me. The only place you're safe is down here at the bottom of the pyramid with the rest of the actual human beings that aren't NPCs, right? When I did an episode way back in season 1 about corporatism, I told you guys a little story. And I can remember this like it was yesterday. Must have been about 2005 when I was starting my game company. I went to Barnes & Noble. I go to the business section, and I thought, you know what, I got to start the C Corp, and I got to know what the hell I'm doing. So I bought this big book on California corporations, and I brought it home. I was so excited. And I read the first chapter. I don't know that I read anything else. But this first chapter was so demoralizing, it was unbelievable. It basically said, in the clearest language you could possibly read, that I was to not care about my employees at all. That the only sole objective I have in the corporation is to make money. And I am to clip every single thing I can clip to keep that corporate money coming in. The benefits of my employees, the amenities of my employees, the quality of the products that I create. I'm not making fucking cars, at some 500,000 units a year where I can make something out of plastic that's stronger or as strong as, and no one will ever notice. No, let's talk about human beings, their lives, whether or not they can go to a doctor if they need to. I was extremely good to my employees. When we turned on healthcare, man, we had unbelievable healthcare, and I paid my people ridiculously well. But it taught me a huge lesson that I knew nothing about the world I was living in. But the funny thing in my brain is when I listen to certain companies sit there and wax poetic about how much they care about humanity or the environment, or both, and I think about that chapter in that book, I'm thinking, yeah, right. And how come their board of directors is always made of the same globalist pieces of shit that have been destroying the world since they've been alive? Living off fake claims of creating the internet for one, The balls on some people, man. Creating the internet. Oh, yeah? Why don't you tell me how the HTTP protocol works there? When you open a corporation of any kind and you're starting a partnership or you're taking rounds of investment, that's another place where you'll be going, how does the word humanity and what's happening to my backside right now have anything to do with each other? It's all manipulation. How many oil companies have made commercials where they say they care about the environment? And you knew, even as a young person, oh, that's bullshit. I mean, the Exxon Valdez spill will happen, and then Exxon's telling you how much they're cleaning up the ocean all in 1 week. And you're like, yeah, I get that one is fake. But somehow those same people sometimes fall for all the other ones. The idea that a hospital cares about you is just as illogical as a corporation that makes computers cares about who you go to bed with at night. Pharmaceutical companies. Well, I'd say 2 years ago, there was one view about them. Now, at least this year, it's probably split into two oil and water groups that will never mix. The group that understands that For the same reason they wouldn't trust McDonald's with their overall health regimen is the same reason why you wouldn't trust a popular pharmaceutical company with your health regimen. And others that just can't get enough, man. They just can't get enough. For my advice for them is please go back for seconds, man. Go back for seconds until that algorithm of worship is gone. And then the people that are left will stop going and those companies will go out of business, which is why they're trying to mandate it federally that you have to keep them in business. It's part of the bigger program to get rid of us. CEOs of pharmaceutical companies always have, the founding CEOs always have some super duper evil background. The guy that was the inceptional person of the World Trade Organization built and ran Auschwitz. He was the CEO before of a chemical company, and then he sold it to them during the Nuremberg trials to get 1 day in prison and then immediately instigate the Codex Alimentarius, which turned into the World Trade Organization, which Bill Clinton signed the United States into illegally in 1994 as a treaty. Can't do that. The world's got to vote on it, you know. It reversed the polarity of all health. Vitamins and minerals are toxins, and toxins are vitamins and minerals. What can kill you is good for you, and what heals you is illegal. Napoleon law is what they introduced, meaning if you haven't been told that's legal, it's illegal. Instead of common law, which is everything's legal unless it's said to be illegal. Now, obviously, some of you know you buy certain drugs, certain roots, certain things you smoke, eat, whatever, and you're like, hey, man, I can get this in the mail. He's full of shit. And it's like, it's just because it's so eclectic that they haven't put it in the books. But if you truly ask the World Trade Organization officials if what you are buying through the mail is legal, they will say, well, technically no, but no one is enforcing it. The Postal Service isn't grabbing it. The cops aren't willing to arrest you for it. But it is technically, on paper, Napoleon law, illegal. Here's the thing. I'm going to test you here. And just think to yourself as I give you this little quiz. When you walk around your house, especially guys, girls, it's probably a different set of products I don't understand, so I'll stick with the dudes, and women, you're going to have to figure out the products that I'm talking about in your realm. How many of you dudes loved, if you're old enough, you loved Sony Trinitron TVs because they were the best in the world? You liked Betamax over VHS because the picture was clearer and the tape was smaller. Maybe you're all-American, so you went VHS. You liked your Apple computer over your Windows computer over your Apple computer. You bought a Hoover because you believe in that brand, or an Electrolux. How much of your warm, fuzzy feelings come from products? Just staring at them in the house. Oh, I love this product. Oh gosh, let me make a video about how this bullshit makeup makes me younger. How a product gets rid of wrinkles on my face. It gets rid of the appearance of wrinkles. It doesn't get rid of the wrinkles itself half the time, right? At best, in my world, it's a vitamin bottle. Solera brand, vitamin C, 8-hour time release, 1,000 milligrams. That's magical to me because it's taking a little piece of God and putting it inside me and getting healed. That's miracle stuff. Bed sheets, well, I love them, but man, I don't sit there and go, man, I got to figure out who made these, man, because I got to worship the company. Let products be useful things to you that you enjoy using because they improve your life. But think about how you might be connecting loyalty to things. News channels. Man, we have all been there, haven't we? I told this story one time, but I got a TV at 15 years old. I came home from the hospital. I was in there for a week for malnutrition because I caught bronchitis. I didn't eat right. And I had a TV. And headline news from CNN was 24 hours all of a sudden. It was a new thing in my little town. Went from 4 channels to 100 channels overnight. I mean, literally. And I just used to leave that crap on while I'd work. And I was just brand loyal. That didn't change for, like almost 3 decades. But then I got onto a different brand, and that brand turned out to be just as bad as the other brands, right? And every time I feel embarrassed that I got hooked with bad information, it's because of brand loyalty. Then it goes down to the mockingbird level where you're now loyal to an individual because that guy and that girl, she's so hot she can't be telling me anything that's a lie. He's so cool, he's got to be telling me the truth. And now imagine that I don't know if this happens, but imagine you were loyal to someone because you have the same sexual orientation. Like, what sense does that make? You can't be telling me a lie because we sleep with the same sex, But you know what happens? How many times have you been lured in by an actor? You love this actor, and then you find out they're just the worst human being to other human beings. You don't even want to accept it at first. The loyalty card has to be something that goes out carefully. It used to be in the Midwest, where I came from, loyalty was not given. Respect wasn't given. It was all earned. You didn't start at a negative unless something else had been, a reputation preceded itself. But you definitely let someone earn it from zero. Now, the only exception to that would be the velocity at which you would hang out with the person to let them earn that positive would accelerate if someone said, this is my buddy, you're going to love this guy, this is my friend, this is so-and-so, she's a great whatever, hang with her and you're all right. That would just make you spend more time with them, but it didn't jack you up. And nowadays, people are able to worship people they don't even know. And where else have we seen that little algorithm? Well, I talked about movie stars. Definitely, people believe that the fictional characters they are portraying, meaning they are not speaking any words they've ever written themselves. They're speaking words that other people have romantically crafted, filmed by the best directors, filmed by the best cinematographers, edited by the best editors. Music goes on to even add more cushion to your brain and make, I love that person. Oh my gosh, I just want to have their babies. And I'm a guy. But you remember, Elvis Presley used to get the crowd going pretty good. But when the Beatles debuted on TV, man, wasn't it Ed Sullivan's show? Then he also let Elvis do his thing. The girls screamed so loud that you couldn't hear the music. There wasn't a girl in the audience who wouldn't have laid down their life for those guys and had any babies they wanted to have. But do they know them? Hell no. Training. When they saw this phenomenon, when those who control the world saw this phenomenon of influence, they got into training. Let's make more of these kids. And that's why eventually the Beatles do an album cover with a bunch of dead babies all over their body. A bunch of dead baby parts. They have real meat slabs and doll heads and all this other weird shit. And they did not reject it. They let the album go out. It was out in America for two weeks or 2 months or something like that before they were like, or 2 weeks in England, I think. And I think America completely rejected the album cover. Okay. You think the Beatles were all great? How could they be? How could they be agreeing to have something like that all over themselves? This is the 60s, man. We don't have The Exorcist yet. We don't have Saw 23. We don't have all this Jason and Michael Myers movies out yet. Texas Chainsaw Massacre hadn't been made yet. And these guys are like at 21st century level of Marina Abramovich saint worshipping on an album cover. Unbelievable how we fall for this shit. And then we went back for more and back for more and back for more. Your heroes aren't your heroes, and your villains sometimes aren't your villains. It just depends who told you that. And then you sometimes have a situation where you got some bad technology released and some good technology released. And it makes you feel like, well, this is the clear choice. I'm going to tell you a little secret. A lot of you won't know this little secret. And this is a good one. You ready? Have you ever heard about a company that has a product out there, maybe a weed killer out there, and if people ingested this weed killer, they died of cancer, and so the families are trying to sue the company that makes the weed killer? It could be anything. It could be any product at all that killed you. A piece of medicine that sterilized your children. Remember that acne cream in the 80s that sterilized all the guys? Okay. So there's a class action lawsuit A class action lawsuit. And then there's telephone numbers on TV. There's now video ads on YouTube. If you've been hurt by this product, call us. There's a class action lawsuit. Class action lawsuit. You ready for the trick? You ready for the Twilight Zone spin on this game? This should open your eyes a little bit. Who do you think funds the class action lawsuit secretly on the side? The corporation that fucked you in the first place. They get in a law firm. They funnel money through various apparatus. A stock sale of some guy just cashes out a gigantic multi-$100 million bonus check and then just donates it to the law firm. You think all these CEOs getting those giant checks have any of their money monitored? Fuck no. They pay off anybody they want. So here comes the law firm, and they're making you think they're on your side. They got that phone number out there in the Midwest because you got a sleepy, a lazy boy chair that broke your back and gave you scoliosis or whatever it is, and they harvest all of you into a class action lawsuit. What's the difference between class action lawsuit and you going after it yourself? Well, real easy. If you go in it by yourself with your family law attorney, or it's not your family law attorney, but your family attorney, right? Or some other bigwig that you find in the world, you know that when you walk into court, you are getting the best representation possible with the evidence, and you're going to get the highest winning possible. They threaten you, you might lose, right? But a class action lawsuit could have shitty lawyers. You relinquish all control of your earnings to a class action lawsuit. As a matter of fact, the law firm takes a big, giant piece of it. And it's not too uncommon that they take more than 60% of your winnings. So they pay on the side these law firms to scoop all of us up into a class action lawsuit, and then they tank it. But they don't tank it completely, because that might be a little obvious, right? If you completely lost something you should have completely won, well, then you might ask some questions and get pissed off. But what they do is they'll go get a penny on the $100 bill. Right? You shouldn't have had $100, but you got a penny instead. So if you're supposed to get $1 million, you'll get 1/100th of that. Here's some money, kid. I took most of it. I took, whatever you're getting, you get like 40% of it sometimes, right? They wipe their hands clean, boom, on to the next thing that'll kill you. So the game, if you play it right, and the guy that got killed by the weed killer is a dude in the last 5 years. I believe it was the last 5 years. He waited for some class action lawsuits to go through and win. Get crappy returns because it's a controlled opposition, right? Then he goes in solo, and that dude wins. I think it was, I'm going to recall this number. These numbers aren't correct, but it was something like he went in for like $400 million. The jury went off and negotiated at least twice that amount and gave him twice. And this guy's dead, unfortunately. Or he's going to die or something. But they gave him more money than he asked for by a huge margin, right? That's what happens when you go in by yourself. Now stop believing all these threats that they can, put you under. That's your corporate humanity. There's a bunch of doctors that just before the coup fit, well, they just happened to be ceremoniously slaughtered in their homes. Their families were slaughtered. And I mean like an absolute butchering, horrible fucking movie. They got slaughtered. And put in the back of their cars and stuff, because these corporations / globalists knew that these doctors had a lot of case studies and proof that what they were about to mandate on everybody was not going to be good for you. And they're just going to be causing problems. And so prior to the coup going out, I think we're up to like almost 80 doctors and their families in some cases, okay? All getting butchered to death. If they can make it look like a suicide, they will. But a lot of times they butchered him because what they want to do is send the subliminal message to all the other doctors. You fuck with us, this is what's going to happen to you. It doesn't matter where you live, we will find you and we'll wipe you out. They played with the poker hands, right? They played with the poker hands. Another one that's kind of come out, archetypal reveal, was that up until, 2020, none of these medical institutions really gave a shit about you, and you knew it. They made the drugs cost too much. I mean, drugs that have been on the market for absolutely forever. Even generics get jacked up. Go across the border of your country to another country, oh my God. You not only don't need a prescription for it, but you can buy it at like 1/10, 1/100th of the price. Okay, so they made themselves well established in your modern country. They don't give a shit about you. Your government never made sure you had insulin shots. Your government doesn't care if you're obese. Your government doesn't care if you're an alcoholic and your liver's like on its last leg. No, they don't care. But boy, when they need to kill you for their little agenda, oh man, they're right there to give it to you for free, but it's coming out of your tax dollars. They're right there to mandate it so you have no medical choice of your own. Oh, but they have humanity. They care. They made a little drug video that's just got a family playing soccer and all these wonderful things are happening in the video montage that they put together for you. But meanwhile, they're reading to you the 90 ways this one thing can kill you. You know, and the interesting thing about those little blurbs, which we've made fun of for 30 years in comedy, stand-up comedy routines, right? The thing that you don't really piece together is that the first few things that they say, which is the mildest to the worst, right? Or actually, sorry, I think they go from the worst to the mildest because they realize at first when they start hitting you with really fast talk like blah, 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 they know you're not listening as much. And as at the end, it's like, it can make you happy at the end, right? But they hit you with like 2 or 3 ways these drugs can kill you. If you die, call your doctor, If your heart stops working, make sure and call 911, If you wake up dead, you may want to stop taking our drug, And the people still think there's humanity in corporations. The idea that someone cross-pollinates this theory from a computer operating system company over to a medical company is also a hilarious association game. I always told people when I got through a few of these corporations when I was younger, the ones that were owned by mom and pop corporations, like when I joined the TurboTax group, it was owned by a husband and wife company. The husband invented the product. The woman was the president of the company, and she was something else, man. That was a small company. I don't know what corporate they were, but they cared about us employees. They did. They made sure we were okay. Then we got my second stint with that company. We got these vultures that came in to sell the place out. Boy, they didn't care about anybody. So by the time I was at my end of my 20s, I was telling people, I said, look, corporations do not care if you live or die because they aren't somebody. They're an it on paper, right? One of the things I was told, and I think I've tracked this down a couple times to find it's true, was somewhere around the time that Lincoln got rid of slavery. These businessmen walk into, I believe it was the Senate at the time, and said, okay, this is some racist Democratic shit, right? They walk in and they say, look, if a black person is considered a human being, when we clearly know they're not, is what they inferred, then this piece of paper can also be considered a human being. And they started the corporation mechanism. And that's when you get an EIN number, which is a social security number for a piece of paper, basically, and you can collect taxes for it. And it's basically a person, right? Except it's called a corporation. Now, there were entities before that moment that performed the same exact function. But this is where America fully launched the corporate world. Because before that, you needed banking systems. There were different paperwork. You could make a big company, but really the Industrial Revolution was just really getting underway. And somehow that rationale has humanity today. They care about you, right? Human beings have the capability of caring about other human beings. That's the best we've got in this world, outside of a celestial God. But God's, as far as I believe, God cannot be sitting here talking to us all the time. He may have talked to us back in the past because, we need to jumpstart something here, right? But today, a God could not come down and make him or herself known because then we would live in sort of our own mental slavery. Everything we think about would be, what does God think of what I'm doing right now? So that doesn't happen. So right now, we just have each other. And the only glue that makes a synaptical, beautiful brain of the world is empathy. That is the mechanism that transmits the thoughts between human beings that really matter. Are you okay? Everything good? Yeah. How you doing? And I'm not just asking you how you're doing because it's a salutation to get a conversation started, because I already like you. It is I am going to continue listening to what you say, and I'm going to listen to what you say on point, and I'm going to listen to the way you say it to see if there's something subtextual that might indicate you're not actually okay, even though that's the traditional knee-jerk reaction phrase you gave me. I'm okay. Ooh, that's different than, I'm great. I'm okay, yeah. How you doing? Right? I'm all right. Here's my prediction, and this is not prophetic. My prediction is, if we don't completely gut the power structure and mechanisms behind the paperwork of a corporation, then this Blade Runner 1975 with James Caan will be our near future. I think it might be as early as 2050, because we are now, well, it depends. The way I actually divide up the demographic of the world in my brain is that you have your loud, obnoxious fanboys who are up there blogging, talking, and of course they get all the preferential treatment from social media. A lot of them are paid people to do this, right? And the overwhelming 90+% of people don't have any involvement with that at all, and actually probably mildly worship a corporation. I'll tell you a funny little story that cigars give you as a cigar smoker. And this is, oh my God, this is like the faux intellectual cigar conversation I have to hear at least twice a week, which is someone realizing that just like fermented grapes, when you buy wine from a particular year, from a particular vineyard, it can be the best wine on planet Earth. I mean, the 1986 Cabernet from the Rutherford Vineyard, Northern California, was one of the best Cabernets I've ever drank in my entire life. 87 was the skunkiest, sourest, tannin, headache medicine you've ever drank in your life. It was swill. Horrible. Same company, same field, same grapes. Something bad happened. I don't know what it was. Cigars have the same thing. There's no extra chemicals in a cigar. I heard it in a movie the other day where someone was talking about the quality of a cigar. It was like a movie from the 50s. They ferment just like wine, and they have the same problems growing tobacco as they have growing grapes for wine. And so people get all addicted in the smoking world. The Davidoff, the Padron. This is a Padron. This one's amazing, by the way. And so they just lock into a brand. And every time they walk into a humidor, they're only buying that brand, that brand, that brand. Now, if you really are honest and you smoke in a circle, you smoke 4 or 5 brands throughout the year or even more, you'll know, okay, that one went sour. They must have had a bad batch. But you know what? Davidoff had a good year, so I'm moving from Padron to Davidoff. They're really kind of contenders with each other. Might do an Opus X over here, and you go in these little circles. If you don't know that that's happening to sticks, then you can't taste them in the first place. Same thing with wine. If you thought the 87 was as good as the 86 Cabernet Rutherford, then you don't know what wine tastes like. Your taste buds do not work. But good for you, you like both bottles. The reason why I tell you that little anecdote is the following. Some companies have golden years, golden eras, where the company is being run very mom and pop-ish. There's a computer company made by 2 Steves. Well, from about 1975 to I think about 1978, those 2 guys were in charge in the right capacities to build, perfect, and promote their company. They made quality-ass products, ridiculous over-quality products, right? A lot of those computers still boot to this day, as a matter of fact. And then an investment company came in with a pyramid as a logo. They funded the expansion of the company. They took one of the Steves that was the big genius hardware guy, and they burdened him with meetings to the point he quit 2 years later. The other Steve hung on for as long as he possibly could. And when he realized he had been infiltrated and that his products were all being destroyed and that Big Blue was coming to take over his sector. And it was 1981, Big Blue drops their computer and his company was shit. Now, this other Steve, the other Steve quit that year and the other Steve was left. He went off, grabbed a few of his buildings on the side, ran a pirate flag up the pole, and took 12 people and made the famous Macintosh computer. But then, at that point, he had already pulled on another CEO to run his company. He used to make sugar water. And they had to figure out a clever way to keep this company from gaining foot ground on Big Blue, because the whole thing was to infiltrate and destroy the company. Well, the remaining Steve went to every single college and high school and said, what would you pay for a machine that could do this? And he showed them the prototype, and they said, okay, well, the highest we could pay for a computer like that would be $19.99. That's as much as we can pay. He said, fine, that's what it's going to cost. You good? We'll bring him in the dozens to each one of you guys. So he goes off and perfects the computer, makes the price point work. And then when the sugar water salesman, who runs the company now, talks to his colluding board members to destroy the company, they made it cost $500 more than that. And that's why that Steve ended up resigning in 1985, because the product did not sell properly when it sold. The Steve looked like he was reneging on his deal with all the educational institutions, which were going to supply tens of hundreds of millions of dollars in product sales. That is what happens to someone who tries to maintain integrity within the company, because it doesn't have any factor of humanity in it. You never actually see any. Sam Walton used to run a little department store called Walmart. And while he was in charge, he bought American products, which means all the money stayed within the borders of the 50 states. If you made a Weber grill, then he sold it. And that was his commitment to America. As soon as that dude dies, it is utterly and completely taken over. Products then come in from every country out there but America, which means a giant part of the sales goes to those countries and all the profits go over to Europe. The logo has changed from an all-American star between WAL and MART to an illuminated sun, and the rest of it being Walmart. If you got one of those in your town, your hometown, like I do, you can kiss Main Street goodbye. You can kiss any businesses goodbye, and you'll be worshiping the corporation. I was asking a close friend of mine about this phenomenon that happened to my hometown. There used to be, I want to say, 24 stores downtown in my hometown. It's just a bustling, amazing little place. Well, the Walmart moves in from out of town. When Sam Walton worked for it, or was the CEO, downtown thrived. He didn't sell food. He didn't compete in clothing markets that much, meaning the kind of stuff you bought there, you would probably try to buy it someplace else. It's just for people that didn't have any money at all. But after he died, they swapped it out, built a superstore down the street. And I was asking her, I said, why do people go there and work? And buy stuff. Like, what's the deal? And she's probably nailed it. She goes, look, at this point, it's a social interaction point to see real human beings, right? And she said her dad goes there sometimes 3 times a day. Makes sense. That is a perfect summation. It used to be you walk down Main Street. You go in the antique store. You go into the Mercantile, which had 4 different stores in it. Stores for little kids. You go buy your belt buckle and your cowboy hat and your boots and your jeans and your Western shirts at this specific place, which Walmart still doesn't sell to this day, but that place is gone. There's only a couple places that survived. Guy who takes photographs, guy who sells jewelry, because those are specialty items that you don't get in a department store. One woman still has a hardware store. She sells washers and dryers and that kind of stuff, because they don't really carry that at Walmart, at least at that store. Plus, just people go, that's where we go for that. Cars can still sell because they don't sell cars yet, right? So this is a disease that we have, right? I've said it a billion times and I'll say it a billion times again. I see a lot of repost of George Carlin's infamous last bits before they probably gave the dude a heart attack for the third time. He was obviously unraveling their game. And it must have been really disturbing for them to see him up there and just saying it in words that resonated with people, made people laugh, but also made people learn, right? But there's a routine I haven't seen posted by anybody, which is he coined the phrase mall nation. We're a mall nation. We live off malls. Now, I think they took a big hit the last 2 years for sure. There's a mall down the street I used to go to, once a month for that social element of walking around, right? Seeing things I can't afford. I haven't been to a mall in 2 years. In 2 years, man. But when I go, it's, there's some cultures that buy things to show off. There's some people that just immigrated here, so they're getting things they couldn't get a hold of before. I understand. And then you just got rich people going in there because they're bored to death, because money does not solve the ultimate problem that they have, their self-image. There's a guy on YouTube that has a whole channel on derelict malls. He goes and either tours a mall that's been completely closed down or one that's probably about to be closed down. And, we all have, if you went to these things in your lifetime, especially if you're around my age, you remember them in the 80s, and you remember like these amazing moments, eating food that you would never eat and getting products you couldn't get in your hometown. Like I used to always get great music at malls, because even though my town was pretty good with music, guys trying to sell me the same music for a tremendous amount of more money than I would normally have to pay in the big city. Plus the selection is just limited, right? So I understand the addiction of its newness. But now these archetypes have played their hands out, I think, quite frankly. So we have this agenda, which is probably the two agendas I think that the American public, I should say the global public has figured out, is that the medical institutions are there to kill you and take all your money. The protocol is killing people left and right. And that's, related to the latest thing. The other one is that they know the news is bogus. The stuff going on in the Ukraine is just, the news you're seeing is just the worst stuff you've ever seen in your life. Video games being posted as real life footage. Articles from 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years ago are getting promoted as recent news. Okay. I saw a guy on a website that posted a huge chunk of videos of all dead Ukrainian soldiers saying they're Russian soldiers. He doesn't even know what their outfits look like, apparently. So we know that those two institutions need to be corrected. How we correct it, it's a tough one to correct, right? The third one, and I think a lower priority, is definitely consumerism, right? We've got to get off this consumerism economy. These Black Fridays, this over-sensationalization of Christmas, which is, they'll literally tell you, if you don't go out and shop, your country's going to be in the tank. No, the corporations will be in the tank. But what's the most important one that would really nip this thing in the bud right off the bat? It's the corporation itself. The entity of a corporation. In America, we have three: the LLC, the S Corp, and the C Corp. I have done mostly C Corps with one LLC. Actually, I've done two LLCs, but no, that's actually not true. I did a bunch of C's in an LLC. What do you always hear from the news? That the government gives the corporations tax breaks. Gigantic, multi-billion-dollar tax breaks. They'll cite all kinds of ridiculous reasons, right? They'll cite the economy's bad, so they'll bail out a big car manufacturer. They'll bail out the airlines. But you don't get any bailouts at the bottom end. But you're just as important, if not more important, because you are the foundation of the country itself. Well, for anyone who's done the research in the 16th Amendment, you'll realize we didn't have income tax until 1913. But if you listen to the modern neighbor, they'll tell you that, well, man, if you don't pay your taxes, how are we going to pay off for all this crap that we've got going, right? Especially crack pipes, right? Well, the answer to that question is that prior to 1913 and the false ratification of the 16th Amendment, remember, three to four states reported being held at gunpoint on Christmas Eve. Literally. Okay, to sign that thing in. All right. Well, They taxed corporations is what they did. But that Jekyll Island meeting they had off the coast of England, where two of the senators tried to return on the Titanic, aka the Olympic, who were killed to try and blow the whistle on this whole thing. Well, they said what we're going to do is corporations won't pay anything, and the money will be coming out of the people, and it'll be coming out at a much higher tax rate. Corporations in America have a nice little thing, and everybody loves it, which is that you get to take all your deductions first before you claim any of your incomes. You make $1 million, but if you can claim $800,000 in deductions, then you're only made $200,000, and that's what gets taxed. Again, in America, you could form an LLC, get an EIN number, and then tell your employer to pay your EIN number, and they can't refuse. They will say they can't pay that, but they can. It's absolutely positively legal. And then you could take your deductions first as a subcontractor, even within your own company. Doesn't matter who you work for, that's a legal thing to do. But they will lie to you out of sheer ignorance or manipulation, mostly ignorance, that they can't. Once we start changing the subsidies, the tax write-offs, corporations will have to start paying their own bill. I mean, there was a report that said that Obama gave Bezos $60 billion in free shipping from the United States Postal Office. $60 billion in free shipping. Now, Prime has their own vans now because I think that money's probably tits up by now. But all that Prime free shipping you got, you paid for it through your taxes. Even if you didn't buy an Amazon product, you paid for it. $60 billion. Okay. So, in this episode, I just want to readjust your radar just a tad. The most important thing we can do is at the psychological level of humanity is to stop worshiping corporations. Stop thinking they have a humanitarian fiber to their body. They are charged by the sheer definition of a corporation to not care about the human being. Go to the bookstore. Try to find that book I read. I wish I wrote it. Read the first chapters. Ask anybody. It's all about the money, not about the humanity. And then try and tell me where you're going to find the fiber and a board director that they're going to do the right thing. How many times products are shipped out and they're crap and they don't recall them until a bunch of people die? And then it has to be a lot of people die of it. Then they'll recall it and fix it. Humanity? Are you kidding me? FDA, the appointed FDA, non-elected officials. Again, as long as the drug kills you in 20 years and not right away, well, the board of directors for the FDA is going to be retired by then. They'll pass it through. They're literally designed to be shuffled out of their seats before anything hits. And then if it hits on their watch for something past 20 years ago, then they just demonize the company. It's all prearranged. They've already written all the PR. This product's being pulled off the shelf because of this. No more sales. Well, that's fine, but almost nobody gets any reparations. Why? Because the class action lawsuit's controlled by the corporation. They put out the 1-800 numbers, they harvest you, and they tank the case. Time to wake up. That's all I want to say on this. I'd be interested in your comments, any of your experiences, any of the other things I might have missed, any of the other angles that could be addressed. Maybe what you've done to break yourself free of that whole thing. If you haven't been to the website, deepthoughtsradio.com, that's where everything is. Audio, videos, social media. Again, we have more independent social media than official ones. There's an all-new remastered Season 1, a store with some pretty funny stuff on it. Thank you for those who are purchasing over there. Really appreciate it. And for those who donate to the show through PayPal or Patreon, I appreciate you very much. You make it happen. Take care of yourself and someone else, and I'll see you in the next Deep Thoughts. Over now. But now, what are some of the, let me reset that.